My name is Ava Monroe. I was 15 when I first learned what it meant to be useful, but not welcome. Serena Caldwell. The woman who raised me lived in a penthouse in Tribeca that smelled of polished wood and imported candles. To the outside world, she was elegance. To me, she was precision. Flowers arrived every Thursday at noon, dinner parties followed menus written by hand, and photographs were curated the way museums curate exhibits. Quinn Astor entered her life 2 years ago, and from that moment the balance shifted. He was older than most of Serena's friends, sharp in his tailored suits, and wealthy in a way that made people lean closer. Quinn treated generosity like a transaction. He gave only to remind you what you owed. He smiled when the cameras were on, but when the music faded, his rules filled the air. Do not block the skyline. Do not answer questions with more than 3 sentences. Consider yourself lucky to stand in the light at all. I remember the first time he looked at me directly. The housekeeper was steaming a dress in the corner, and I had just carried in a box of candles for the rooftop event Serena was planning. Quinn adjusted his cufflinks, barely glancing up. "This is not your home," he said evenly. "You are tolerated." The words were not shouted, but they struck harder than a raised voice. Serena did not correct him. She poured her wine and let the sentence settle into the marble countertop. Families have hierarchies. In ours, Serena and Quinn stood at the center, basking in admiration, while I lingered at the edge like a shadow. At dinner parties, I was placed near the kitchen door so guests could pass me their empty plates on the way out. In photographs, I was angled into corners, smiling like a guest worker. When I brought home certificates from school, they disappeared into drawers. But when Quinn discussed his investments, Serena glowed as if she were hearing a love poem. The engagement came one evening in May, announced with a rooftop toast overlooking the Hudson River. The applause lasted too long, and Serena basked in it, her hand glittering with a ring that could have purchased my entire education. Plans began immediately for a grand rooftop celebration at the Artemis Hotel, a place where ballrooms are named after constellations. Serena and Quinn formed a limited liability company to handle the event payments. Rich people love to tuck even their parties into little corporate boxes. My role was clear. I was given the welcome table. Ribbons, place cards, gift envelopes, tasks that made me useful without giving me presents. I ironed each ribbon until the creases surrendered, and I practiced calligraphy with borrowed pens until every guest's name felt memorized in my wrist. At night, I told myself that attention to detail was its own kind of dignity. There are 3 memories that explain the distance between Serena and me. First, a winter morning when I was 11. I had a science presentation scheduled at 8. Serena promised she would come if her breakfast meeting ended on time. At noon, I received a text with a heart and an excuse about a luncheon. By 4, she had sent a photo from an art gallery, champagne in hand silver frames behind her. That evening, she touched my shoulder and said, "One day I will teach you how to move in rooms that matter." I folded the poster board and slid it behind the dryer where forgotten projects go. Second, my 14th birthday. Serena had promised theater tickets. At the last moment, they were exchanged for seats at a charity dinner. I was introduced as our scholar, though no scholarship had ever covered my tuition. I kept quiet and smiled for the donors, but I felt the difference between being acknowledged and being displayed. Third, an enrichment trip I qualified for with a modest fee and a parent's signature. The fee I could cover by working weekends, but the signature never arrived on time. By the time Serena remembered, the last seat had gone to someone else. I rode the bus home, sat at the kitchen counter, and finished my homework beside a candle that smelled like lavender and unspent promises. To be fair, Serena was not cruel in obvious ways. She stocked textbooks, knew how to call school administrators to her side, and carried tea to my room when I was sick. But love that counts minutes often miscounts people. As Quinn became more permanent, Serena spoke more and more in the language of efficiency. What is the simplest solution? What is the cost of a complication? I became the complication. Still, I found blessings in smaller places. The librarian who saved me the newest books. The neighbor who taught me to keep a basil plant alive. A teacher who wrote a letter that read like a steady hand at my back. And always hovering at the edges of silence, the name of Morgan Hale, my other parent, spoken rarely in our apartment, as if saying it could lower the temperature in the room. The Rooftop plan grew by the week, a jazz band that played standards with grit, floating candles in glass bowls, a menu that quoted the farmer. Serena rehearsed her speech in the mirror while Quinn drafted sponsor acknowledgments. My instructions remain the same: keep my coat on my lap, answer questions briefly, and avoid taking up space. One evening, a concierge brought up papers that required Serena's signature for vendor payments. She signed quickly where Quinn pointed. Temporary, he told her, just so, invoices can clear. It was a power of attorney, though I didn't know it then. A small act disguised as paperwork, one that would tilt the balance further. The night before the rehearsal, Quinn raised a glass in the kitchen. "Good eye," he said, when I corrected a crooked place card. "You're useful when you stay out of the way." Serena smiled, and I smiled back, filing the remark away like a receipt. Older listeners will know this truth. The first chapter of a storm is not the lightning. It is the stillness in the air before the break. I laid out my simple dress and steadier resolve. I did not yet know about a sealed envelope from the bank with my name written clearly across it. I did not yet know about a group chat insult that would one day play on a rooftop screen. All I knew was that the undertow had a rhythm, and once you learn a rhythm, you can step aside and let the wave crash without you. The city wakes differently by the river. The air is sharp with salt and exhaust. The water holds the light like a mirror with cracks. That evening, Serena and Quinn arrived at Chelsea Piers dressed as if stepping onto a movie set. Serena wore white silk that clung and moved at once, while Quinn's suit was so precise it seemed to straighten the air around him. I followed behind with a garment bag and a paper-thin hope that this time perhaps I would not be left standing on the margin. At the entrance ramp, a woman in a navy blazer checked names against a clipboard. When Serena and Quinn approached, the lanyards appeared instantly smooth as sleight of hand. Serena slipped hers on, already waving to a cluster of friends in pastel linen. When I stepped forward, the woman smiled, but the kind of smile meant for polite refusal. "I'm sorry," she said, "this yacht is at capacity. Guest list only." I turned toward Serena, expecting a word of correction. Instead, she pressed a slim envelope into my palm. "For dinner and a cab home," she murmured, as if money could replace belonging. The envelope was heavy enough to mean calculation $200 I would find later, folded flat, as though even generosity had to be ironed. Quinn glanced over his shoulder. "Do not embarrass yourself. You barely belong at the dock." His words carried no volume yet. The dock hands turned their heads. Then he lifted Serena's arm with gallantry, guiding her onto the gangway, as if he were ushering royalty. I stood on the pier, the envelope burning in my hand. The yacht horn sounded once, long and indifferent, before the vessel slipped into the Hudson. Strangers waited for me to move out of their photographs. A guard shifted as if to suggest my place was elsewhere. Humiliation comes in tides. It does not crash, it pulls. When the wake flattened and the boat became a streak of light downstream, I walked home. The city, merciful as ever, swallowed me whole. I bought a slice of pizza I could not taste and dropped the coins back into the envelope. Climbing the stairs to our apartment, I paused at the mailboxes as I always did. Habit, ritual, maybe hope. There, among the flyers and circulars, was an envelope with weight. My name printed in clean serif font, a return address that belonged to a bank I knew only from advertisements that promised legacy and trust. Across the top, a red stamp, urgent. I carried it upstairs without tearing it open, as though the paper might scatter if mishandled. The apartment smelled of lavender and lemon polish, the scent Serena demanded the housekeeper use. I opened the envelope with a fruit knife, since the brass letter opener belonged to her. Inside was a notice from Hale Trust Services. My name appeared clearly not as an afterthought, but as a beneficiary. It confirmed a scheduled contribution on the first of the month. It referenced a guardianship clause. It listed the account title Ava Monroe and Morgan Hale. I read the name again. Morgan Hale, a name I had not been allowed to speak in years as if it were contraband. The letter did not state the amount, but it offered a direct number to call for clarification. And scrawled at the bottom in pen was a note from a relationship manager. "We have been trying to confirm your address. Please contact us immediately." My hand shook not with fear but with recognition. I reached for the ceramic jar in the pantry, the one Serena labeled sugar, though it never held sugar. Inside, I found them a stack of envelopes torn open, resealed, their postmarks months and years old. Each bore my name. Each had come from the same bank. All those nights Serena said bills were late. All those explanations about paperwork lost in the mail. They were not accidents. They were choices. I spread the envelopes across the counter like cards in a rigged deck. Then I dialed the number. The voice that answered was calm and warm. "Hale Trust Services, this is Diane. My name is Ava Monroe," I said carefully. "I've received a notice regarding a trust account in my name. I need to confirm it is not a mistake." There was typing, the sound of keys pressed by someone who knows each strike carries weight. Then a pause. "Yes," Ava Diane said softly. "This account has existed for many years. It is funded monthly. The co-signatory is Morgan Hale." The name landed like an anchor. I asked, "What address have you been sending correspondence to?" She hesitated. "The address we have on file is the Tribeca residence. We have had numerous returns marked undeliverable." My eyes swept the counter, the envelopes slit and resealed by hands that smiled while stealing. "Would you like to schedule a meeting?" Diane asked. "We can meet at our Midtown office. If you prefer, I can notify Mr. Hale as well. His file indicates he wished to be contacted should you reach out." "Yes," I said. My voice did not shake. "Please tell him I'm ready to meet." When I hung up, the apartment seemed hollow. On the counter lay years of silence, suddenly loud. I took the slim envelope Serena had given me at the dock, slid the bills into the ceramic jar, and left the note of carfare and pity empty. Tomorrow I would sit across from the parent whose name had been hidden like a secret. Tomorrow, the rhythm of the undertow would break. Morning met me at the curb outside our building, the kind of city light that makes everything look honest. A dark sedan eased to the hydrant and a familiar face stepped out. Morgan Hale did not rush. Morgan moved the way steady people move, like nothing in the next 5 minutes could frighten them. There was gray in the hair now, and fine lines that said sleep often lost the argument, but the eyes were the same as in my kitchen drawer photographs. Warm, careful. "Ava Morgan," said, and my name sounded like it had been waiting on the tongue a very long time. "Let us get you out of this wind." We rode in silence to Midtown, the car humming like a held breath. At Hale Trust Services, a woman named Diane led us into a small conference room with a bowl of lemon drops and a view of rooftops. She spoke in plain sentences and kept interruptions away from the door. I liked her immediately. "Here is the shape of it," Morgan said to me once the door closed. "Since you were very young, contributions have posted on the first day of each month to a trust in your name. It covers education and health until a set age. Then you and I sign together for anything larger. Nothing dramatic. Just structure." Diane slid a folder across the table. Escrow statements. A ledger of disbursements. Copies of envelopes stamped undeliverable. At the back sat a neat stack of photocopied checks endorsed by Serena over several years, marked reimbursement and household support. Each line explained a feeling I had never found words for. "I tried not to crowd you," Morgan said. "But we kept writing. We asked for updated contact information. We even sent holiday cards. They came back. Or went quiet. I should have pushed harder. I thought of the ceramic jar at home and its false label. I thought of letters sliced open and resealed like nothing had happened. "You showed up today," I said. "That is the thing that matters." Diane tapped the folder. "There is a second matter," she said. We received an electronic notice from a hotel vendor yesterday. It references a temporary power of attorney Serena signed, recently naming Quinn as agent for event payments through a limited liability company. I am not a lawyer, but I would be concerned about scope. Which is why I brought counsel, Morgan said, as the door opened for a woman in a navy suit with practical shoes and intelligent eyes. Ava, this is Charlotte Nguyen. Family and estates. Charlotte shook my hand the way doctors do when they plan to explain hard news kindly. My job is to translate the complicated into the human, she said. Here is the simple version. First, a temporary guardianship order can give Morgan decision authority on your behalf without removing your voice. It is often used in cases where a caretaker's choices conflict with a young person's welfare. Second, we can file a revocation of that power of attorney if it endangers you or misuses shared funds. Third, we can ask the bank to hold vendor payments that move through a party company until a court checks the books. An audit, I said. A gentle word is discovery, she answered. But yes, we ask for receipts. If everything is clean, it continues. If not, we pause and sort. How much money are we talking about? I asked. Early invoices suggest several $100,000 routed as deposits and so-called retainers, Charlotte said. It is not the total that worries me, it is the pattern. New company, fast movement, very few internal controls. Diane set down 2 notarized forms. If you wish, we can execute the revocation today. I will courier copies to the venue and the company that handles the wedding accounts. I read, then signed. Morgan countersigned where the form asked for the person who still remembered to show up. Charlotte nodded once in approval and started a short list, her handwriting square and certain. Next steps, she said. We file guardianship. We notify the hotel of the revocation so they do not accept Quinn's signature. We request statements from the event company. We arrange for you to collect personal belongings from the apartment with a building staff witness. No arguments, no scenes, just gather what is yours and anything addressed to your name. On the way down to the lobby, the concierge waved us over. Miss Monroe, he said, sliding a small parcel across the counter. This was held at the desk after repeated returns. We recognized your name. Inside the parcel lay a ribboned bundle cards for birthdays that had never reached me, a paperback with a note on the flyleaf, a little silver key on a tag that read, "For your bicycle." None of it expensive, all of it specific. Evidence has a way of feeling warm when it is also love. Morgan put a hand on the parcel and looked at me, not at the paper. I do not need you to forgive lost years, Morgan said. I only need you to be safe while we make them less lost. We took the parcel with us to the Artemis for a brief meeting with the on-site events manager. Charlotte wanted the venue to see our faces and the revocation in person. The hotel's office sat behind the ballroom, more fluorescent light than stars. While Charlotte conferred with the manager, I waited at a small desk beside a bin labeled Lost and Found. There, as if the universe had decided to hand me a hinge, lay Serena's tablet. The lock screen did not ask for anything. Someone had toggled convenience over caution. A messaging app sat open to a thread named Family. A recent line from Quinn glowed on the glass. Do not let the baggage near the stage. The word was not new. Seeing it typed gave it a weight I could hold. A second line followed, casual as napkin talk. Make sure the cameras never catch that kid alone with Serena. We are done letting pity ruin the frame. I looked up. Morgan was still with the events manager. Charlotte was reviewing the copy of our revocation. No one watched my hands. I lifted the tablet and used the share function to send the 2 lines to my phone, then to my email, then to a private folder only I could open. I returned the tablet exactly where it had been and told the desk attendant it might belong to my guardian. She thanked me for my honesty. In the car, I showed Charlotte the screenshots. She read without commentary, then said, "Words typed in a quiet room often speak very loudly in a public one. We will not need to raise our voices." How public? I asked. As public as a rooftop with screens, she said. If you choose. I opened my calendar and set a reminder for the evening of the party at 10 o'clock, when toasts usually crest. I did not write a dramatic label. I called it Truth in the Light. By late afternoon, filings had been sent. A clerk stamped our guardianship petition received. The bank acknowledged the revocation and the hold on the event company's account pending verification. The hotel manager promised not to accept Quinn's signature for anything beyond the water for the band. None of it felt like victory. It felt like moving weight from the wrong shelf to the right one. On the sidewalk, the wind had softened. Morgan handed me a plain envelope with an address on it. "My home," Morgan said. "Until this is sorted, you do not go back upstairs alone." "I will be ready," I said. "Whatever they try next." Charlotte gave me a card. "You do not have to be loud to be strong," she said. "You only have to be specific. Documents, times, names. Let them supply the drama. We will supply the paper." That night, I laid the parcel of returned years on a borrowed dresser and read every line. Then I placed the screenshots in a folder labeled for mourning, not revenge, preparation. The undertow had a rhythm, yes. But now I had one too. The Artemis Hotel was built to impress. From the curb, the glass tower looked like a crystal tuned to catch every ounce of sky. From inside, the ballroom was dressed with floating candles and a skyline so close you could almost touch the windows of the buildings across the street. Serena and Quinn had spared nothing. I could smell the imported orchids before I even cleared the lobby. Guests moved in polished groups, their laughter crisp, their clothing cut from fabric I had only seen folded in magazines. I was stationed at the welcome table as promised. My task was to hand out envelopes marked with gold lettering, each one containing drink tickets and a small printed note about gratitude. I kept my head down, practicing the quiet smile that neither invited nor resisted conversation. Quinn passed by once, pausing to adjust a crooked ribbon on the table I had already straightened. "Stay useful, but stay out of sight," he whispered. His tone was flat enough that only I could hear. Serena followed close behind, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She did not look at me. She rarely did anymore. As the evening deepened, the rooftop filled with glassware and voices. A jazz band slid into standards, and servers balanced trays with shrimp skewers and champagne flutes. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A simple reminder popped up at 10 o'clock, Truth in the Light. I slipped the device back into my pocket and waited. The toasts began at 1:15. First, a business partner praising Quinn's vision. Then, a cousin remarking on Serena's generosity of spirit. Each compliment stacked higher, as though words could be bricks for a tower that kept reaching past the roof. Quinn lifted his glass at last, his voice loud enough to carry without a microphone. "Tonight," he said, "is not only about love, but about building a legacy. Serena and I are investing in a future that values loyalty, elegance, and family. We are fortunate to have support from so many corners. And let us remember here," his eyes found me standing stiff at the welcome table, "that family is not measured by blood alone. Some of us are guests in this life, tolerated rather than chosen." A few guests chuckled politely, unsure if it was a joke. My face grew warm, but I did not look away. Then the screens flickered. Large panels at the back of the rooftop set to show a live feed of the skyline shifted to a plain background. Text scrolled across in stark letters. "Do not let the baggage near the stage. Make sure the cameras never catch that kid alone with Serena. We are done letting pity ruin the frame." The room went quiet. Forks lowered. Someone gasped sharp as glass. More lines followed, the group chat messages Quinn thought private now displayed 12 feet tall. My name repeated in them, each time smaller, each time reduced to a problem. Quinn froze, glass half raised. Serena's hand tightened on his arm, but she could not stop the murmurs swelling across the crowd. Phones appeared, pictures snapped. The hashtag was born before the projector finished scrolling. "Not your baggage." The band faltered and stopped. For the first time that evening, all eyes turned to me. I did not speak. Instead, I lifted a folder from beneath the welcome table and walked to the master of ceremonies, who looked as shaken as everyone else. He took it with trembling hands and after glancing at the first page, cleared his throat. "This document," he said into the microphone, "is a notarized revocation of power of attorney effective immediately. All vendor payments for this event and for any related company accounts are frozen pending review." The crowd rippled. A woman near the front whispered loudly enough for 10 people to hear, "Does that mean tonight's bills are unpaid?" Quinn tried to interject, but his words tangled in the air. Serena's face was pale under the rooftop lights, her ring catching every flash of the cameras now pointed at her. I stood quietly, not triumphant, not apologetic, just present. The screen shifted one last time, showing a ledger with dates and amounts. Transfers through an event company, deposits labeled retainer, withdrawals marked consulting. Numbers that did not lie. Hundreds of thousands routed through paper as thin as the napkins on the cocktail tables. The silence broke with the sound of chairs scraping, guests excusing themselves early. The rooftop that had been built for celebration became a stage for doubt. No one wanted to be photographed beside a collapsing facade. Quinn's voice rose then louder than I had ever heard it. "This is sabotage. This is an intrusion. You think a child can undo me?" Serena tugged at his sleeve, hissing his name, but the microphones carried his words too far to be recalled. Every guest heard, every phone recorded. I let the moment stretch. Then I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving them to their explanations. The hashtag followed me down the stairwell, phones lighting up with new posts, new comments, new witnesses. By the time I reached the lobby, the party upstairs was no longer an engagement. It was evidence. Outside, the night air felt lighter than it had in years. The truth was out. Not in a courtroom, not whispered in a kitchen, but written across the skyline for all to see. The storm had broken, and I was still standing. Family court does not look like television. The ceilings are low, the carpets are tired, the coffee tastes like it has been negotiating with the machine all morning. What matters there is not volume, but detail. Charlotte met us at the security line with a thin folder and a calmer smile than I felt I deserved. Morgan stood at my side, a steady shape in a gray coat that had seen honest weather. We sat at a long wooden bench while clerks called names and shuffled stacks of lives. When our case was called, the judge asked simple questions in a voice that made people tell the truth without thinking too hard about it. Charlotte began with the clean bones of the situation. A young person, me, living in a home where a caretaker's decisions were not aligned with my welfare. A temporary power of attorney signed in haste used to move event money through a new limited liability company. A pattern of mail meant for me opened elsewhere. A trust account that had been sending regular contributions on the first day of each month since I was very young. The bank's representative testified by phone. Calm, precise. The monthly deposit schedule. The returned envelopes. The contact notes requesting an updated address. The judge asked for totals without numbers that would complicate the record, and the witness complied. The shape of the river mattered more than the exact depth. Then Charlotte placed a single printed page on the table where the judge could read it without squinting. The page came from the trust instrument, a clause written in courteous language that does not blink. If the primary caretaker is shown to be neglectful, or to have interfered with the beneficiary's lawful communications, or support co-signature authority expands to the beneficiary and the other named parent at a specified age. The age had arrived. The signature line had a place for me. "Do you understand what that means for you?" the judge asked, looking at me rather than over me. "I do," I said. "It means decisions about my education and health will be signed with me, not around me." The judge nodded once. "And do you understand what guardianship means today?" "I do," I answered. "It means safety and a clear line until the rest is sorted." Temporary guardianship shifted to Morgan that morning. It was not a dramatic moment. It felt like someone had finally put a book back on the shelf where it belonged. Then came the accounting. The hotel's event manager produced copies of invoices and authorizations. The limited liability company tied to the engagement had moved deposits labeled retainer, and consulting staggered in the weeks before the rooftop party. Charlotte stacked the documents so the dates told a story. The total, as far as the court could see at that moment, approached $800,000. The judge did not flinch. The order that followed was plain: a forensic look at the books. No further spending without court approval. No use of my name or my supposed consent on any document related to the event. Serena and Quinn sat across the aisle. Serena kept her eyes on her hands. Quinn watched the room like a man trying to spot an exit only he could use. When the judge asked if they wished to respond, Quinn stood. "This is a clever child's temper," he said. "Someone fed her papers she does not understand." The judge lifted a palm the size of mercy. "Sit," the judge said. "Papers understand themselves when they are clear. We will hear from counsel, not from tempers." Charlotte did not raise her voice. She pointed to the group chat lines now entered as exhibits: the revocation notarized before the party, and the vendor's confirmation that the revocation had been received in time to prevent more money from moving. She did not characterize anyone as cruel. She did not need to. The record did the talking. Orders issued, copies stamped, guardianship to Morgan. Discovery opened on the event company. The trust clause acknowledged in writing with instructions for how I would sign for larger decisions alongside Morgan. It was not revenge. It was alignment. We left the courthouse into air that felt washed. Morgan bought me a tea from a cart that had been there long enough to know every clerk by name. "You did well," Morgan said. "You told the truth without performance." I took a sip. "Performance is their department," I said. "I am better with paper." "Paper is patient," Morgan replied. "It holds." That afternoon we went back to the penthouse with Charlotte, not to argue, not to stage a scene, but to collect what belonged to me. The building's head of security met us at the door with a clipboard and a witness badge. We signed in the way people sign when they intend to be remembered correctly. Inside, the apartment smelled like the expensive candle Serena burned when guests were expected. The living room looked like a showroom. The kitchen looked like an apology. I went to my room and began to pack methodically. Books first. The sweater that still smelled like laundry, done right. The few photographs that had not been curated out of existence. While I folded my life into 2 suitcases, Charlotte walked with the security officer through the study to retrieve anything addressed to me. Mail, school forms. A simple file marked medical, as if health could be filed. On Serena's desk sat a lacquered box that had belonged to her grandmother. Charlotte asked the officer to open it. He did so gently, like someone handling a memory. Inside lay a stack of documents with my name in the fine print. Wills I was not part of, but acknowledged in footnotes. And one set of papers that made me sit down on the edge of the carpet to keep the room from tipping. It was the real estate title for the Tribeca apartment. Title is a dry word. This one was not. The line that mattered ran clearly: ownership in Serena's name, with a 10% interest assigned to Ava Monroe, created years earlier at Morgan's insistence as a protective measure. A smaller signature beside the notary's stamp confirmed it. My name had been there all along, not as decoration, but as a sliver of solid ground. Serena stood in the doorway, hands clasped so hard the knuckles whitened. "It was for later," she said, voice thready. "For safety." "For yours," I answered. "Not mine. Safety is not a secret." Quinn appeared behind her, face set like glass that would rather not reflect. "That 10% will be diluted," he said. "We will restructure. Paper can be rewritten." Charlotte turned, voice still even. "Not retroactively," she said. "And not while an active court order is in place. Please do not threaten future fraud in front of witnesses." No one moved. Then Serena stepped aside. "Take what you need," she whispered. "Leave the drama." "We did," I said, and zipped the second suitcase. Before we left, I placed a small key on the hallway table. It belonged to a metal box I had found in the closet, the kind used for receipts or souvenirs. Inside were the birthday cards addressed to me that never arrived, a cheap bracelet I remembered from a fair, and a lock of hair from when I was very small, pressed into an envelope with my name spelled correctly. Evidence of a different woman once. I did not take the key to hold anyone hostage. I left it because some locks are not mine to open. On the way out, I thanked the housekeeper by name for keeping my few things folded and unbroken all these years. She pressed my hand and told me quietly that she had saved 3 letters in her bag when asked to discard them. She gave them to me at the elevator without ceremony. Every kindness matters. Paper carries love as surely as it carries orders. At Morgan's door that evening, we stacked the suitcases in a hallway that smelled like ordinary dinners and no performance at all. We laid the title copy and the court orders in a shallow tray by the entry, like people who had learned to keep their safety where they could see it. Morgan tapped the paper once, not to claim it, but to honor what it had cost. "What happens next?" I asked. "Tomorrow we make breakfasts," Morgan said. "Next week we answer questions. The month after that, we keep living. The court will do its work. You will do yours." "And Serena," I said. "And Quinn." "Serena will meet the conditions if she wants a future that includes you," Morgan said. "Quinn will meet his accountants." I stood in the doorway for a long breath and listened to the silence that comes after a house stops lying. The undertow was still there in the distance, but I was on firmer sand. The court had spoken. The title had spoken. The trust clause had found its age. I did not need to raise my voice. Paper and a patient room had done it for me. It has been almost a year since the night the Artemis screens carried words meant to bury me. Time moves differently now, slower in the good ways, faster when joy forgets to count itself. I live in a quiet walk-up on the Upper West Side, a place with creaking floors that sound like honesty. Morgan insisted on co-signing the lease until the trust papers settled, but I signed my name beside it. The pen did not shake. Charlotte visits sometimes for tea and updates. She brings stories of other families who found themselves in rooms where paper finally spoke louder than cruelty. The rooftop at the Artemis still stands, of course, but its name has changed. Once a month it hosts a dinner for youth who have been told, as I was, that they are baggage. We call it the Foundations Table. We serve ordinary food: pasta bread, still warm apples sliced by hand. No floating candles, no orchestras. Just laughter that belongs to the people making it. The first night we set the tables, I realized legacy is not built with marble or power of attorney. It is built when someone leaves the chair beside them empty, waiting for you. Serena wrote twice. A short note in careful script that asked if there might be a path back. Then a longer one that never quite said sorry, only circled around the word with phrases like misunderstanding and poor timing. I placed them in a drawer with the old envelopes she had hidden. They are evidence of a kind, but also reminders. Not everything needs an answer. Sometimes silence is the reply that holds best. Quinn did not write. His company faces an inquiry that will last years. Whenever I see his name in the paper, I think of his voice on the rooftop. "You barely belong at the dock." I smile then because the dock is far behind me. The river kept flowing. As for me, I keep studying, keep working. Some evenings I still sit by the window with a pen practicing names in calligraphy, the way I once practiced for a welcome table. Only now the names belong to donors who believe in our cause and to friends who deserve to see themselves written with care. Older listeners will understand family is not a photograph where everyone fits. It is a contract written in the quiet actions of those who show up when the storm comes. It is Morgan waiting by the curb. It is Charlotte's even voice in a loud room. It is the neighbor who watered a basil plant when I was small, and the teacher who wrote a letter that pushed me forward. I sometimes climb a nearby rooftop at dusk. The city does what it has always done, burns its lights, plays its horns, carries on. I do not need the skyline to bend toward me. I only need the chair I sit on to feel steady. And it does. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: you are never just tolerated. You are not baggage. You are the whole journey, and you get to choose who travels with you.